So fun fact, that doesn't need to get turned off. Never. We run into that. We ran into that at the city a lot. Of so, but yeah, people would turn off their computer every single night, and because they turned it off every night, they couldn't. Can you not hear me, Sarah? Okay. So, yeah, they turned off the computer every single night, and here's a fun fact: we install updates at night. Everybody installs updates at night, and so the way they're set is it won't install updates during business hours, right? So they would turn it on at 8, leave at 4, and turn it off, and so the computer would never be getting updates. And because when they first got a computer in 1987, and I'm not joking, that's what they were told to do. And they've done it for 20 plus years. And it's like, well, things have changed a little bit, and you can leave it on. It's not going to run up the electrical bill of the city. We're all good. So, all right. We are in the book of Luke this morning. We are going to be in Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19 this morning. So, Zacchaeus, Luke chapter 19. He entered Jericho and was passing through, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich, and he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up to him and said, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay in your house today. And so he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to his house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. So very interesting here. So a little bit about tax collecting in the first century. So unlike today, tax collectors were crooked and dishonest in the first century. All right, maybe not much has changed, huh? So back then, the way tax collecting worked was if you were a tax collector, you would see what the tax bill was, say $1,000. Okay, and then you would go to Tommy, I'm going to collect your taxes, and then it was commission based. So I would determine how much to add on top of that for my fee, my collection fee. And so I may say, okay, Tommy, your bill is $1,100. Okay, that's, not terrible, right? But what some of these tax collectors would do is they would say, okay, Tommy, your bill is $2,000. And back then, Tommy would have no recourse of, he can't say, well, I itemized my deductions this year. He wouldn't, he couldn't do that. Whatever the tax collector said was what it was, right? And so these individuals got a reputation for being dishonest. And Zacchaeus is among them. And he is also he is a chief tax collector. So he is higher up in. Does anybody else know of another tax collector running around at this time? Matthew, right. So Matthew is a tax collector as well, not a chief tax collector, but a tax collector nonetheless. Now Matthew, we see when he is called, is at his tax booth. because you would pay taxes on consumption, on goods, and so you might be bringing your stuff to market, and there would be a tax on those kinds of things, like we would might pay on like imports and sales tax and things of that nature. So tax collecting was a bit of a dishonest trade in the eyes of the world. And for those who were Jewish of nature, who were ethnically Jewish, it was considered a betrayal to be a tax collector, because effectively you're colluding with the enemy. So you are working with the government, the Roman oppressive government, in order to swindle your fellow countrymen, right? So it's understandable why they, might not have the best of reputation. So here's the situation. That's who Zacchaeus is. The situation is that Jesus is coming to Jericho. There's a blind man whom Jesus has healed. And as he's going through Jericho, Zacchaeus hears about Jesus. He wanted to see who he was, and he's a smaller fella. And if you've ever been a smaller fella in a crowd, you just hope that you can see something, right? So Zacchaeus climbs up into a tree, and Jesus is passing by, and he looks up and sees Zacchaeus, calls out Zacchaeus, and asks Zacchaeus to take him to his home. So what is interesting about that is Zacchaeus is, by Jewish reckoning, a sinner. He is a betrayer. Now, is he actually a sinner? Not necessarily. Mark? So that is how some of them were picked, yes. But it's one of those situations where it's kind of like some of them got drafted and some of them stayed drafted. You know what I mean? So yeah. So now there were also, but here's the other side of that coin, is the Jewish leadership at this point in time was very corrupt. Okay. You have at this point in time two high priests, right? You got Ananias and Caiaphas, right? And it's not because the Bible said that there were two high priests. It's because there was the actual high priest, and then there was the high priest who was recognized by the Romans. Now, they're related. One's the father-in-law of the other. And when you look and study through this intertestamental period, so the last 200-ish years of Israel's history, you find that the Jewish leadership kind of became a little like organized crime. Like we would think of it like he's the godfather, these are all his capos and lieutenants and this kind of thing. And then you also have the Herodians into the mix. And effectively, there was very little that happened without Jewish involvement, right? Without these guys being involved. So even though the Romans may have appointed tax collectors, or even in some cases some volunteered, you would not have become a tax collector unless those people in power wanted you to be a tax collector, if that makes sense to you. So Zacchaeus was considered by and I'm pretty sure it's probably the Herodians who are picking them, because the attitude towards tax collectors is these are betrayers, these are sinners, these are people who are against the faith. Now, some of them compromise their faith, so they are Roman employees, and so they are, basically kicking it with the Romans, and so they are giving up the things that God has told them to do. But some of them were just, may have been faith seekers or faithful as they could be, but just had a job that was questionable. Nevertheless, the response to Jesus going to Zacchaeus' house is one of just pearl clutching, right? How could he? They grumbled, is what the text tells us. How can he be the guest of a man who is a sinner? And that's the opinion of it. Now, skipping down a little bit, we see that the reason is the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. We also see that in Mark chapter 2, right? So it's interesting. The religious leaders are clutching their pearls because Jesus is spending time. And remember, table fellowship was the closest form of fellowship. Inviting someone to your house and sharing a meal with them is the closest form of fellowship you could have had. And Jesus does that. And the reason is because that's how he influenced people. That's his job, was to not go to the healthy, but to go to the sick. And so Jesus was seeking and saving the lost, and he went where they were, right? Sometimes when we take a look at how do we seek and save the lost, we want them to come on our terms. We want them to come to us. But the examples we see in the New Testament, yes, people came to Jesus, but Jesus also went to the people. And so it's not an either or, it's a both and, right? Any thoughts on that before we go into the next part about Zacchaeus' change of life? We're in Luke 19. So Zacchaeus has this interaction with Jesus, and he makes, "Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will restore it fourfold." All right. So he says, I am going to commit 50% of my net worth to the poor, right? So 50% off the top to the poor. What's more is that if we're at 4x, so back to our illustration with Tommy, if in the process of collecting taxes, Zacchaeus went to Tommy and said, "Tommy, you owe me $2,000," when he really only owed $1,000, he would then restore Tommy $4,000, whatever he defrauded him fourfold. That could potentially be a lot of money. And so effectively what we're getting from this is that Zacchaeus has mended his ways. He has repented and is bearing fruits in keeping with repentance, and is effectively saying, hey, I am committing to be content with what I have. I am not going to worry about my money. I am going to use what money I have to serve those who need it and to make amends to those who I've wronged. And that's the right attitude. And the response that Jesus says in verse 9 is, today salvation has come to this house. He repented of the wrongdoing, and then he took action. He was planning to take actions to make up or make amends for what he had done wrong, or what he should be doing as a faithful Jew. The story of Zacchaeus is the story of anyone can make the choice to do the right thing at any point in their life. But it is hard for a rich man, right? It's easier for a rich man to, right, go through the eye of a needle. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven, right? But Zacchaeus is a rich man who changed his ways, so it is possible. Thoughts or questions on this story? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You ever try to thread needle? So I was putting together some sewing kits, and got a number 10. And it's a number 10 hand sewing needle with a regular eye on it. And effectively, it's that big. You can't, like, you visually almost can't see it. Like, I'm sitting here going, and like I was having a hard time threading it. So I thought, okay, I'll buy a threader. The needle was so small, even if you went, even if you're talking like a canvas needle that's got a pretty big eye on it, it's that ridiculous imagery of a camel trying to go through something. It's impossible. It's not going to happen, and that's the gist of what that that parable or that illustration is that it is an impossible task, right? And yet Zacchaeus succeeded. Greg? Called the eye of the needle? Yeah. Well, so two thoughts on that. One, I haven't seen all of the archaeological evidence to back up that. Two is understanding that Jewish writings spoke in colloquialism, okay? And so something does not have to be literal for it to be true, right? It's raining cats and dogs. Is it literally raining cats and dogs? No. That is a colloquialism. It's an idiomatic statement, meaning it's raining a lot, right? It's hotter than blue blazes in here. Is it actually hotter than blue blazes? What is a blue blaze? It's really hot, right? Is it actually? No, it's not. It's a very comfortable 72, you know. So, and this happens frequently. Everyone came to see Jesus. Did everyone come to see Jesus? No. The whole town came out. Did the whole town actually? No, probably not. So it is very common in Jewish literature to make these kinds of idiomatic colloquial statements that are not meant to be taken literally, but are meant for the impact of what they are. So a camel through the eye of a needle, could it be? Yes. Like I say, I haven't done enough research on the archaeological side of it to say that definitively. But I do know that the idea is colloquial or idiomatic in nature. So even if it is a literal needle, it's a ridiculous, impossible task. But does God turn anyone away from salvation who wants to be saved? No. So we know based on other scriptures that it's more about the imagery than anything else. Mark? So, right. It's more about the attitude than, it's the idea. So the rich person can't go to heaven because their wealth is more important than their salvation. The moment that ceases to be the case, like with Zacchaeus, they can get their life right with God. Tommy? Yeah. Yeah. If he had defrauded. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. He was definitely a seeker. Like he wouldn't what person that's casually interested in their faith would climb a tree. Yeah, the text doesn't tell us that he is dishonest. He is perceived as dishonest. I think the idea being is he was ready to become poor in order to get right with God. Like that is the takeaway from this. And you say that's a level of faith that I think we even struggle with today is that and there's also because there's a certain level of subjectivity to how the taxes were collected, and it may be also that he's just putting that challenge of, Greg, if you think I defrauded you, come to me and let me know what I defrauded you and when, and I'll make it good, right? Not that he did, but that he's putting the ball in their court. Correct. I pay somebody else to do it. I don't fool with it. Like, I don't. So here's the funny thing. Because I value my time. So, well, sort of. So the reality is that the tax part of the U.S. tax code is actually very simple and small. It is all of the deductions and the other parts of it that is what makes tax code complicated. And so as somebody who, I long for the days when I could file, if I could file a 1040. You run a business, that's, well, you know why? Because that, when you file a 1040 EZ, it's because you have nothing more than the standard deductions to take, right? So you only are worried, so that little bit of the tax code. The rest of it, when we start getting into business depreciation and this, that, and the mileage and all that kind of stuff. And so and as a minister, I have never been able to file a 1040 EZ. I just can't. And so I have, so I'm a minister. I was a W-2. I run multiple businesses. And so I deduct my accountant off of my revenue because that's what I do. And he's a buddy, and I look at it as paying for his kids to go to college. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The gate. Yeah.
And the bottom line is, when it comes to repenting, we all have to do what? Humble ourselves, take off whatever is that is, killing us, right? Whether it's your money, whatever it is, we have to humble ourselves, take all that off so that we can enter the kingdom and humble ourselves to Jesus. So, it is hard for the rich man. I can see that.
Yeah. So, just so we're on the same page, is just a casual look through some of research on it, is that I was like, I know there's a reason why I don't put it in. Is there a gate that's called the Needle Gate? It was called the Needle Gate from a long time ago, 11th century. Yeah. Was it called that at the time of, the first century? We don't have evidence. So that's why. Could it have been? Yeah, not gonna rule it out. But like you said, it's more about the repentance side, right? And that's what Zacchaeus does. He is a rich man who. And here's the thing: we know that there is nothing wrong with having accumulated wealth. We have is love money that is revolving. And how, Zacchaeus at the very least thought he had things in his life
than that. Yeah. And he took, things got taken away from him. And whoever was his wife or his friends, yes. He said, well, it was God's to give. And if it's God's to give, it's God's to take it away, right? Right. So he understood that. And then he also understood that no matter what, keep his faith with God.
Yeah, and that's the key, is faith in God, changing your life to reflect what you believe, right? And that is a key component of, and that's a key component of Christianity, that my life reflects what I believe. Other thoughts on that?
Is that, when you think about the Testament, isn't that how we think about lawyers today? Sometimes we think lawyers are all liars, manipulators of the law.
Well, I mean, some stuff, right? Lawyers, tax collectors, elected officials, like some, like stereotypes are been around for thousands of years. And are there good lawyers? Yeah. Are there good politicians? Yeah. It's one of those things where it's not necessarily that just because he's a tax collector that it's bad. It's not good writing the text does not explicitly say that he was defrauded. But it's one of those situations where, tell you what, it would have been very hard for him to rise to the position that he was in without some at least turning a blind eye, right? He was a chief tax collector, which means he had other tax collectors who reported to him. So, was he going to those guys and say, look, you can't defraud me? I don't know. And we just can't. But what we can know is that he was making sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was right with God. No questions asked, he is right with me. I'm repenting. If I even defrauded someone, I'm going to make it right with him. And Jesus says as a result of that salvation has come to this house. So he acknowledges the genuineness of his repentance and his commitment to living his life on service. And I think that's an important thing. All right, let's keep going. Let's see. Oh, into the point. Yes. That does seem, well, so here's where this question comes. Here's where it comes, okay? So it is in the present tense. And you can read it one of two ways. Right? You can either read it as his existing character is such, which it could be, right? So that play this out in your head, okay? These people running, he's a no good sinner. And so calls the table, he stands up. Well, as a matter of fact, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I defraud anyone, if I find an accounting error, I pay it back fourfold. So it is his current spiritual condition, is that he is good, right? Or it is that he is dedicating himself to being faithful, and that it is the idea of this moment on, this is the action I'm going to take. The problem is we don't know which it is. Right, which would be an idea of a declaration of tender moment. And that's the challenge with language is, because there's some context that you just don't get in the page. If just like one word, verse 2, would alleviate all of our issues, right? If it said there was a man named Zacchaeus, he was a chief tax collector and was rich and a righteous man. Well, we wouldn't have any questions, right? But I don't know outside there were sin, there was an oops sin offering. Okay, there were sin offerings for if there's any sin that I forgot that I did, I'm sorry, sin offering.
Oh, you call it the oops?
Yeah, it was a sin offering, right? Because and right, that's Job offers, huh? Gap insurance, right? Job does that for his children, right? He goes and he offers.
Is that gap insurance?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's gap. Sure. With that, no,
It's free.
no problem. Yeah, she gets the zingers pretty well. She gets the zingers pretty well. Hold on, I don't parse. I no longer parse things in. I have to use a cheater now for when I do this stuff. Stood, behold the Lord, half my goods I. Just want to make sure that it's not. It is a present active output. Cool. So it is exactly what it sounds like. So it is I do this. I go to the store, I run, I do those things. So it is a present active. So that means that it is something that is happening. But normally in language, things I will give, which is future. But we just don't know, right? But what we do know is that he wanted to make sure he was right with it, right? And you also have to go, Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house. For the man of God came to seek and save the lost. So that's worth noting too. If he was such a righteous man, what's Jesus doing? Right? Now, it could be that he is lost only in the eyes of the Jewish leadership, right? And so Jesus is telling them that, he is not lost. He's actually closer to God than you spiritual leaders are. Or it could be that, the more traditional interpretation is that he had things he needed to get right.
He's telling
Then,
pride that you're thinking wrong. God, salvation comes from all men. And he'd be considered one of the really, really bad ones, like traitor, thief, probably. So it's for the people too. They recognize salvation has come. He comes to everyone.
and why has salvation come to this house? Well, number one, because this is a person whom society cast out, Jewish society, and potentially because of his attitude. He had a repentant heart. Now, whether or not that was his attitude before Jesus came or because or when after Jesus comes, it doesn't matter. What matters is he makes that statement. Jesus assesses the heart and identifies to the crowd, today salvation has come. And there could be a little bit of tongue in cheek there, right? Because who is salvation? Jesus. So today salvation has come. Could you be that? Know that that is interesting. Other thoughts? Well, let's keep going. Because
that's the light exposing darkness.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
You need that.
Let's keep going because there's more to it. Okay. As they heard these things, right? Today salvation has come to this house. For the Son of Man, since he's also son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. As they heard these things, he proceeded to tell them a parable because he was near to Jerusalem, because they supposed the kingdom of God was to appear immediately. He said, therefore, a nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and then return. Calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 minas and said to them, engage in business until I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we do not want this man to reign over us. And when he returned, having received the kingdom, he ordered these servants to whom he had given the money to be called in him, that he might know what they had gained by doing business. The first came and said, Lord, your mina has made 10 minas more. And he said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. Well done, good servant, because you've been faithful in a very little, you shall have authority over 10 cities. So the second came and said, Lord, your mina has made 5 minas. He came and said to them, are you, and you will be over 5 cities. And another came and said, Lord, here is your mina, which I kept away in a handkerchief, for I was afraid, because you were a severe man, take what you did not deposit and reap where you did not sow. He said to him, I will condemn you with your own words, you wicked servant. You knew I was a severe man, taking what I did not deposit and reaping what I did not sow. What then did you not put my money in the bank, and at my coming I might have collected it with interest? And he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him and give it to the one who has 10. And they said to him, Lord, he has 10 minas. I tell you that everyone who has more will be given, but the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. But as for these enemies of mine, who did not want me to reign over them, I bring them here and slaughter them before me. Very cheery note there. All right, so we have the imagery of God calling people, right? God is calling people, giving them a responsibility to be faithful over what has been entrusted. Those who are faithful in what God has entrusted, God will reward more. To those who are not faithful, God will not reward. In fact, God will punish. Now, there's a lot more, there's a lot, we got about 5 minutes left. But that is the idea. So, again, it's tied right where Zacchaeus, and then it goes right into this parable, right? The story of a man who either is being faithful and commits to his faithfulness, or a man who encounters Jesus and commits to be faithful. Either or, Jesus or Zacchaeus commits to being faithful. He either makes that vow or renews that vow in the presence of Jesus. And Jesus goes on to say to all of these same people who were just grumbling about him spending time with sinners, he says to them, look, God, God is entrusting or has entrusted his servants, and he is going to judge those servants. So maybe, just maybe, you ought to be faithful with what God has given. That is the 30-second synopsis of that parable, right? Now, there is, they supposed that the kingdom of God was to appear immediately, and so they thought the Savior was going to come, and boom, the kingdom of God was going to be restored. The kingdom of David was going to be restored. Of course, we know that the kingdom is not an earthly kingdom, but a spiritual kingdom. And so there's a certain level of which this was a statement to them in the first century, but it's also a statement of us to us today, right? Of the responsibility we have to be faithful with what God has entrusted us, right? And that's a humbling thought, right? That's a humbling thing. I remember when my buddy Sarah got married to Jamie. Her dad passed away when she was like 12, I think, 11 or 12, very young. And her dad responsibility. Responsibility to be faithful, responsibility to live out our faith, to do the things that He has called us to do. And that is can sometimes be a heavy thing when you stop and think about it, right? But just like in the parable, the loyalty, the faith, the responsibility in serving the master, serving the nobleman in this case, outweigh any fears that we have, right? Because that's what the one-minded guy does. He lets his fear be what motivates his actions versus the others who let their faith and trust motivate their actions. This is a job. I trust in the nobleman, that I should do my job. Thoughts, questions, or comments? All right. So we are finished with, as far as we're going to get into it, there's a few more interesting things. But we are going to pick up on the 11th of January with a new Bible class. But we are going to pick up on the 11th of January with a new Bible class on the fundamentals of faith. What are the fundamentals of faith that a Christian needs? And so I encourage everybody, if there's someone who is not only here on Sunday mornings, encourage them to come. It's going to be a beneficial class. We are dismissed.
I just texted, get here, we have to see you. Did you get the song for the PowerPoint?
I did.
Okay. You're gonna lead that song right after the scripture. Right after the scripture reading. I was gonna tell you, I wasn't gonna leave you hanging. You don't like that. What's your song? I like to put it there.